To tell you a little story about our experience of developing e-learning materials. Let me start you off by watching a small film.
Which glass of water would you choose to drink? There are millions of people in the world who do not have the choice. Oxfam are doing something about it every day. Over the last few decades, humanitarian crises resulting from both natural disasters and conflict have become more frequent and are increasing in size and scale. Responding quickly, especially in the first few days, is vital, and it is Oxfam staff on the ground who are best placed to respond to an emergency, delivering aid quickly and effectively. This is because national staff understand the culture, geography, language, and local customs. In addition, national staff will always be immediately available to provide assistance and will often not require extra governmental permits to travel to remote areas. Delivering food, clean water, sanitation, cash, and shelter, and preventing the spread of diseases like cholera in the aftermath of a disaster is essential to saving lives. So building the capacity of staff on the ground to respond to such emergencies is vital. The Emergency Capacity Building project comprises a consortium of 6 agencies that work together to improve the speed, quality and effectiveness of the humanitarian community across the globe. Different aid agencies bring different areas of expertise to humanitarian programs, and one of Oxfam's key competencies is water, sanitation and hygiene promotion, known as WASH. Lack of resources, insecurity, and local culture and customs make access to face-to-face training workshops difficult or even impossible for some national staff, even if we could run enough of them. Also, usually humanitarian programs are time limited, meaning people trained today may have moved on tomorrow. Oxfam chose Walkgrove to work with them to design 2 key courses. The first aimed at Oxfam public health promoters, covering information, education and communication in WASH emergencies. It aims to develop critical thinking and analysis skills to help Oxfam staff tailor an effective response which both meets the community's needs and is appropriate to its culture. The second course, Technical Project Management in WASH Emergencies, is aimed at engineers who need to improve their contract management skills within the framework of a project management approach, finding a balance between the 3 core elements of quality, cost and time. The Oxfam WASH programs were piloted by 288 staff from 52 different agencies in 49 countries, and a further 107 staff have accessed them since their recent completion. The project has been judged a huge success by project sponsors and has been well received across the worldwide audience. A Level 3 evaluation via interviews has confirmed transference of skills to the front line. I was already developing a radio spot for Dadaab, but after the course I did some pre-testing of the radio spot, and the section of the course on pre-testing radio spots was very helpful to me. I was very impressed by the pedagogy and workflow. Congratulations on a great product. I am re-evaluating the concepts because these are not new concepts. We've just been ignoring them. This training has enabled me to contribute more to the discussion around cholera in our office, and especially around prevention, responses and flooding. Time, cost and quality. Integrating all of these together is so important. I won't forget this. or that logistics is really key for a good project to run. Positive feedback has flowed back from national staff on the quality of the learning in terms of usability, interactivity, valuable lessons learned, and the contribution this has made in practical and measurable terms to skills and improved project outcomes. In short, to saving lives.
Three years ago, Oxfam, working in the ECB consortium, received a grant from the European Union Commission's Humanitarian Office for developing the capacity of national staff. We were earmarked to spend that money because we have built up a reputation in the sector on specifically water, sanitation and hygiene promotion. I work in a department that makes staff, money, equipment and advice available to the country offices that Oxfam runs whenever they need to design and implement an emergency program. Most of my colleagues at the moment are working in the Philippines, in South Sudan, in the Middle East, and in the Democratic Republic of Congo, setting up and running and advising such emergency programs. This was the project objective under which the Emergency Capacity Building Consortium was set up. The results of the project that we were supposed to implement were supposed to be a critical mass, not under-ambitious, of national humanitarian stakeholders and staff in 5 diverse disaster-vulnerable countries, which would have increased their skills to deliver faster and higher quality humanitarian responses. Note the scale of the ambition. We're talking about 5 countries, and they were Niger, Kenya, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Bolivia. Also note, we were targeting a critical mass of national staff. That means we were talking about our target group being people who had been raised, not in English as the main language, who would have acquired some basic English in the course of their education in Bangladesh or Indonesia. Oh yes, we said, we were going to do this, and we're going to do e-learning. Because if we do an e-learning capacity development program, we can reach staff in 5 countries. It will be way more sustainable rather than sending technical experts through these countries and running face-to-face workshops. In that way, it will also be more value for money, because once set up and developed, those training programs will exist forever. And yes, we want to do it because we've never done it before. It's exciting. We also think it will cater to individual learners' needs. People who go through the programs can pace the progression according to their own understanding. An e-learning program, in our view, will also offer a wide area of activities that engage learners in different ways. These were the reasons why we set out on developing the first e-learning program for humanitarian work in Oxfam. 2.5 years on, if we want to evaluate our experience, if we look at the facts, the hard facts that are usually brought about by accountants, and look at what we did against the project plan, the budget, the time schedule, we did not manage to do that. If we look at the result In comparison to the vision that we set out at the beginning, we wanted to do the best pilot ever. We wanted to develop something that we would be proud of. Judging by that criteria, yes, we've managed. But let's be clear about what the stumbling blocks were to our project management ambition and the likelihood to deliver. We were landed a time frame of 1 year. Oh well, we said, no problem. We were given a budget of £45,000. Oh yes, we said, that's fine. Mind you, none of us had ever known anything about e-learning. And there I mentioned the innocence of the uninitiated. You can also replace the word innocence by obliviousness or naivety. We said we would do e-learning and were utterly, totally clueless on what that meant. Content we didn't really have. We had ideas about what the content could be about. Technical requirements. What had videos to do with bandwidth? No idea. Expertise. What is an instructional designer? And how do you move from the initial meeting in Oxfam House to developing a product of this kind? We had no idea. And so you see, in our progression over a year, I have highlighted in red the changes that came about. The project was scoped out in July 2011, and thank goodness we very quickly realized that the 1 year time frame was ridiculous. So we went back to the donor immediately and said, please, can we have 3 more months at the end? And they said, fine, good. We then started a tendering process, in the course of which I got to know a procurement department in Oxfam House that I'd never come across, and they were talking a language I had never heard. I, by the way, am a capacity development advisor with no technical background on e-learning. In November, we made available 2 subject matter experts for 6 weeks. We said, okay, those 2 people will develop the contents, the course, the progression, and you, Wargrove, please at the same time build the instructional design around it. Our subject matter experts were based in Brazil and Egypt. Every now and then they came back, and in January, when their 6-week period had expired, we looked at the results. Me as a project manager and their own team managers looked at what had emerged and said, no, that's not really what we had in mind. So in January, we started a redesign process where the technical experts of our department were brought in. And of course, the inevitable happened. The technical expert, of course, will always find something to add. Or we haven't thought about this, and what about that? And no, we need to cover that area. So we knew that this product was growing and growing. In May, we then knew that rather than having built 2 courses of 1.5 hours each, we had built 2 courses of 4 to 5 hours. Those were piloted in July to September. September, October, we reviewed the feedback from the pilot phase, then developed the gold version in October and November, and did manage to close the project in December, including the final report to echo on the impact the product had had. Just a little aside, I was the project manager of this endeavor, and this is the series of stakeholders that were part of it and had to be kept on board, happy, aligned, satisfied, or at least convinced that everything was going fine. What made, from our side, What were the factors that helped us along the journey? One was bog standard research at the beginning. I think I must have looked at something like 100 hours of e-learning courses and stuff as a way to develop my own understanding of what I was talking about. It was very helpful to have the engagement of the other 5 agencies on board and their technical understanding. There was a lot that I am grateful to Oxfam House for all the staff and e-learning experience that suddenly I was able to discover hidden in teams that I'd never been aware of. I should also be grateful for the additional amount of money that was given to this project when we had overspent dramatically. Most importantly, we were given the space to make mistakes and learn from them. That's very, very rare, but that is probably the most valuable ingredient of our project success. And we knew, however difficult the journey was, we knew very clearly if we had to balance out quality, cost, time, it had to be quality above anything else. I shouldn't underestimate, I shouldn't underemphasize the extremely good relationship we had with Wargrove, who were hand-holding mainly me through the process, but also our technical advisors, putting up with our ever-changing opinions of what we wanted or didn't want. And last but not least, it did require an enormous amount of energy. What are the 2 courses now about? They place the learner as a technical staff member into an emergency context. And there, the learner needs to make decisions and understand why. The decisions that are due are realistic. They are embedded in the work we do. The scenarios are the kinds of scenarios we are up against everywhere. Drought, flooding, earthquake, and they deal inevitably with a large number of displaced people who have lost access to houses, infrastructure, toilets, water. The courses take about 4 to 6 hours, but due to the bookmarking facility, one doesn't have to do them in one go. And there is print material that can be accessed through the course. This is the entry page to the first course, Information, Education and Communication in WASH Emergencies. What a lot of jargon, you might think. What is this about? The professional expertise that is conveyed in this course is about how to make people change their behavior so that their lives are safer and their hygiene practices are safe. If that sounds a little bit blasé, yes, we all know what that is about, may I remind you, smoking in the UK, the obesity scare, the issue about who's eating 5 a day or not, it's the same issue. It's a question of information, communication and education all around how to make people change their behavior. So on this slide, the learner needs to check out who thinks what about cholera. Oh, you might say, it's so clear what cholera is about. It's a disease transmitted by faulty water supply systems. Well, if you work in contexts where people think that cholera is a disease that has been sent by the gods, then it doesn't matter what clever campaigning you do around safe behavior, because people won't listen. So it's important to understand who thinks what. Who of the men think what? Because often it's the men who have power over communities. Who has the power to influence the community best? Remember, in the 1990s in this country, the MMR debate. It's the same issue. Who is steering the debate? Who are people listening to? This is the same in the work we do. This is the entry page to the Technical Project Management course, which is about helping engineering staff to set up a water supply system in a situation that has been flooded. It involves planning, resourcing, sequencing of activities and making decisions all along the way on staffing, money, security, safety, procurement. Here you have an example slide where the learner has to decide, in this earthquake, what types of toilets should we be making available? Portal ones? Raised ones? Should we just use plastic bags? And the learner has to evaluate each of these options against the parameters of cost, operation and maintenance, resource mobilization, and time. Note, there will always be more than one solution that might be appropriate. Which one is the best one will depend on the analysis the learner needs to do. We have received such overwhelmingly positive feedback from the people who went through these courses that I must admit it has been most humbling. You will be not able to read all of this. Let me pick out just the key phrases in the orange bit. I feel I understand better what my manager is doing. Going through the courses, a lot of learners for the first time understand the context into which their work fitted and how the various parts of Oxfam's activities fit together. The project officer in Zimbabwe is brought up to think about things he'd never thought about before. Also, our wash assistant in Haiti notes that this was the first e-learning course he's done, and he's excited about doing more after this. What we are extremely proud of is the participation rate globally that we achieved through clever marketing, clever communication across the agencies, but at the end of the day, it was down to the level of people wanting to be part of this. 288 staff from loads of agencies worked their way through the programs in the pilot phase. In those 2 months, 116 completed them. We're proud that not a single participant from across the globe said anything negative about the pitch of English language. We got that right. The feedback was just astounding. Utterly, totally, invariably positive. Rarely do we hear that. And we're very proud of the quality of the monitoring and evaluation that we put into and around these courses. The IEC course has a pre-course and post-course questionnaire that helps learners understand their progress through the course. The Technical Project Management course has 2 inbuilt mechanisms. One is a scoring mechanism whereby the learner gets scored according to the quality of their answers. And at the same time, every time they provide an answer, the answer is evaluated against quality, time, cost. So there is the 3 dials that will always be visible. Both courses had an evaluation format at the end that learners had to fill out if they wanted a certificate. And we also carried out semi-structured interviews with the learners from the first phase about 6 months later. What we need to remember if we go into the next, not if, when we go into the next e-learning journey, or for you if you do it for the first time. Technical experts are not e-learning experts. Our engineers and public health promoters are great at the jobs they do. they have no idea, usually, what e-learning is about. They rely on the human-to-human interaction to train up people, to run workshops, to advise people, to coach people. Take the human element away and feed it somehow into a flat medium like a course is beyond most technical experts in our sector. Our e-learning colleagues are not familiar with the reality of our work. Oh, we had lovely little conversations about the use of tablets, iPhones. Ridiculous. Most of our staff, if they're lucky, have access to an antiquated desktop, but only if the electricity works. Let's not assume it works at all times in the middle of Dadaab refugee camp. Cookies. We had a disagreement about how our staff were able to manage cookies. No, I said, most people don't know what that is. Oh, yes, said the company, of course they do. We're in the 21st century. No, I said, a lot of us are not. That was fun. We also realized to help people go through these courses for the first ever time, make no assumptions about how easy it is. We were able to spy through the platform that we set up on people trying to go in, starting the course, and then stopping. And we had one person dedicated to contacting them, asking them, what's the matter? What's going wrong? And bit by bit, the problems that came up was password, username, password, again and again. And people needed help to get through that first hurdle in order even to get into the course. And yes, poorly planned projects usually end up needing more and more efforts as time goes by and as deadlines approach. I've quoted this from a report that I received from a friendly agency before I started out, where they had written up all the mistakes that I shouldn't be doing as I embarked on the journey. And when I read that report again, I found that sense. I thought, ah, yes. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, I think I have 2 minutes left. Yeah?
What are the relearning programs do you see as a priority in the near future?
We are an organization of some 3,000 staff. I have my own ideas about what should be a priority. We have a dwindling resource base in the sector that makes me understand more and more we need to develop e-learning programs. Specifically around humanitarian work, because that's the bulk of a lot of what we do. And in a situation like in the Philippines at the moment, we probably have employed over the past 3 months 300 new staff who are helping in the aid effort. These people will never be sent through long induction periods. So for those kinds of situations around the principles of humanitarian work and how we implement it, I think we need a lot more. Can you shout? Very little. We have the platform support. If something goes wrong on the platform, our IT department helps. It's not a lot. No. The courses are now available on the Disaster Ready open access platform that is run by Cornerstone On Demand. That is a platform for full of free of access, free courses for humanitarian work. At the end of the day, it's down to the experts in my department who spend most of their lives in the field talking to the real people, not the office people, but people who work in southern Sudan refugee camp and the people who we're supposed to help. So you get an idea of what different language you need to use. All right. Thank you very much for your attention.